Welcome to the White Spring Bunker. These halls were built to safeguard some of the most prestigious members of the United States government. We are Modus, and we are always looking for men and women capable of helping us restore what has been lost. In return, we offer this, a new enclave and our refuge from the world above. Please, take your time and look around. The Colonel has made great strides restoring this place to its former glory. Welcome, member, to our little enclave.
Welcome back, members. As always, I am the Operative, your designated tour guide and host here at the White Spring. The butterfly effect. The idea that even the smallest action or event can have significant repercussions thousands of miles away, or many years into the future. On that day of the Great War, a global disaster which saw over 1 billion souls die in nuclear fire, the fate of a single vertibird over the skies of Appalachia would start a chain of events which would reveal hidden agendas and dark secrets, and threaten a greater calamity for us all. And a newcomer to the region, running from her own past, finds herself a pawn in the greater game. Vertibird G-421 of the 54th Special Transportation Brigade took off from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the early hours of October 23, 2077, on its way to its final destination in Appalachia. The crew didn't know exactly what they were carrying, but security around their cargo was tighter than any of them had ever seen before. Captain Pendergast took a look back into the crew compartment. Besides her normal complement of 4, there were 2 large refrigerated crates. That in itself wasn't unusual. His men were used to transporting a wide variety of shipments for the war effort to all sorts of locations around the country. This particular shipment, however, came with 4 heavily armed guards and 2 white-coat scientists. The soldiers all wore sleek gray camouflage scout armor and masks, while the scientists were from West Tech. None of them had said a word, other than the leader handing the captain a set of paperwork authorizing the shipment when they had landed at Mariposa.
So, got any Halloween plans, Captain?
Pendergast looked over at his co-pilot, Lieutenant Tolliver.
Promised the kids I'd be home to take them trick-or-treating. Had to miss last year, and I'll never hear the end of it if I'm a no-show this time around. How about you?
Remember Captain Marshall?
From the 143rd?
Yeah, he just got reassigned to Patterson. Promised to take me out to see Last Stand at Fort McGee and dancing afterwards.
Looking to settle down, Lieutenant?
Maybe. My tour's almost done, and with the war winding down, a girl's got to think about the future.
You could do a whole lot worse. The captain's a good egg, and I'll wager he makes colonel in a couple of years.
From your lips to command's ears, Captain. Hey, did you get a manifest for what we're carrying?
2 crates, refrigerated. Destination, West Tech Appalachian Division.
Well, yeah, I could see that for myself. I mean, what are we actually carrying?
Something cold.
Very funny, Captain. I'm serious. Did you see all that security at Mariposa when we touched down?
Whatever it is, it's need to know. And we don't need to know.
Tolliver sighed with frustrated curiosity and turned back to her controls. They had just passed over the Ohio River and headed into Appalachia from the northeast. Ordinarily, they would have passed over Morgantown and headed directly to the West Tech facility, but increased civilian air traffic meant they needed to loop around. The captain was checking their fuel gauges when they received an emergency broadcast.
Priority 1 alert. All units. Alpha Romeo Bravo. Multiple Chinese missiles inbound.
What the hell?
Captain?
Lieutenant, we need to set this bird down. How far are we from Morgantown?
Maybe 30 miles?
Close enough. Changing course. Message Patterson and see about raising the tower at Morgantown.
Pendergast was starting to turn southwest when he heard someone coming up from behind.
Why are you changing course?
The captain looked over his shoulder to see one of the soldiers standing behind him, hand on the pilot's chair.
Emergency message. Missiles inbound. We do not want to be in the air with one of those nukes goes off in our vicinity. Going to set down in Morgantown and ride this out.
Not acceptable. You are going to West Tech.
Sir, soldier, whoever you are, West Tech is too far. No guarantee we'll make it. What's going on here?
Now it was one of the scientists breaking into the conversation.
Listen, I don't care who you are, but this is my bird. We need to get to Morgantown, and arguing about it is just wasting time we don't have.
Pendergast turned back and started changing course. That was until he felt the barrel of a 10mm pistol against his flight helmet.
Stay on course, Captain. You'll land at West Tech or you won't land at all.
Who the hell do you think you are?
Tolliver's visor exploded in a spray of glass and blood. Pendergast was nearly deafened by the shot, even above the sound of the engines. As his co-pilot's lifeless body slumped forward, the captain turned to see the pistol pointed once again at his own face.
West Tech. Now.
Pendergast flinched as he heard two more shots from the back of the Vertibird. He didn't need to be a genius to realize his crew chief and mechanic had just been killed.
Was that necessary?
Doctor, our orders are to get you to West Tech with the samples. Everything else is secondary. Now go sit down.
Of course.
Keeping his eyes straight ahead, Pendergast seethed. The hairs on the back of his head were standing up, but being strapped to his chair, there was nothing he could do. Damn it, he thought. Just what the hell was going on? His own mind was racing a mile a minute. Nukes were in the air, and the same emergency broadcast kept repeating over and over.
Priority 1 alert. All units. Alpha Romeo Bravo. Multiple Chinese...
Beneath them, they crossed the mountains and into Appalachia, with miles of forest to fly over before reaching their destination. And if they did make it to West Tech, Pendergast figured he wasn't going to live long anyway.
Oh shit!
There on the horizon, there were several bright flashes of light, nearly blinding.
Nukes. Big ones.
Pendergast wasn't worried about the blast waves, as the detonations were too far away. However, the electromagnetic pulses traveled much further, faster, and were much more dangerous. At that moment, the electronics shorted out, spraying sparks across the cockpit. The entire craft lurched to one side as the red engine immediately died, throwing the passengers around. The lead soldier slammed against the fuselage and lost his pistol. It didn't matter to the captain. He strained to look out of the front windows, desperately trying to find some place to land, but all he could see was a blanket of trees below them.
Shit, shit, shit!
They were one engine down, and the other was dying by the sounds of it. They were plunging like a rock towards the canopy below. As the trees rushed up to meet them, all the captain could think about was missing Halloween, and what his kids would say. The small explosion was a mere afterthought on a day when over 1 billion souls died in the nuclear exchange. Across Appalachia, people had more pressing concerns than what might have happened to a single vertibird. Deep in the region, which would soon become known to the locals as the Mire, the wreckage of G421 landed in the swamp and slowly settled beneath the muddy waters. The bodies would soon either be picked clean by scavenger creatures or rot away, while the 2 crates, powered by fusion cores, continued to operate, keeping their cargo intact. It was likely that the wreck would have remained forever hidden, buried like much of the old world by the events of the Great War and its aftermath. However, someone else was aware of G421 and what it carried. And even as Appalachia descended in the chaos of the post-war world, eyes had begun to turn to the Mire. Caravan traffic was bustling at the Big Bend Tunnel. Since the death of the Claw, the Blood Eagle attacks had dropped off significantly, and the growth of settlements in the region meant more demand, more trade, and most important to Vinny Costas, manager of the Blue Ridge Caravan Company operations in Appalachia, more profit. Vinny stretched and looked over the most recent set of contracts on his desk. The vaccine distribution deals he'd negotiated were still bringing in the caps, but now their services were even higher demand, bringing in shipments of weapons for Crater, building supplies for Foundation, and in return sending caravans full of raw materials to other regions up and down the East Coast. Joanna Mayfield, his boss and owner of the entire Blue Ridge Caravan, was mighty happy with the way things turned out, even sending word that she would be making a special trip to see things. Not that Vinny minded, of course, but he'd need to pull back on a few of his side deals.
Well, it was good while it lasted.
Vinny made a tidy sum reselling lost shipments, even after having given a cut to a few of the traders who figured out his game, but they all still made out in the end. He figured Joanna wouldn't mind either, as she greased plenty of palms back in the day before the war, getting her hands on those military transport contracts. But better to be safe than sorry in front of the boss. Adding a little more whiskey to his coffee, Vinny took a sip and savored the taste.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
Vinny could hear someone approaching the tent. Looking at his watch, he frowned. He didn't have any appointments scheduled this morning, and Vinny hoped it wasn't something that would ruin his current good mood.
Hey, boss, got visitors.
Vinny sighed. For what seemed like the 1,000th time, he told his crew that folks needed to make an appointment.
I'm kinda busy right now. Tell him to take a number.
I did. They don't look like the waiting type, boss. Could be important.
Sighing again, Vinny cracked his knuckles and stood up, grabbing his coffee and opening the tent flap. Bobby, one of his crew, was standing there with an embarrassed look on his face. Vinny scowled at him, but Bobby just pointed over to a small group standing off to the side.
What do we have here?
There were 3 of them. 2 were wearing some kind of mercenary gear, with an insignia he had never seen before. The one in the middle was obviously the one in charge. Wearing a ruffled suit and glasses, Vinny could already sense the air of superiority dripping off the man, just in the way that he looked at him. It was not the best first impression.
Let's get this over with.
Vinny walked over, putting on his signature smile, and extended his hand.
Welcome to the Big Bend Tunnel. Name's Vinny Costa, and I run things around here. What can I do for you?
The man in the middle didn't bother to respond. He just looked Vinny up and down. After a few awkward seconds, he nodded to one of the mercs.
We have a business proposition for you. We'd like to talk somewhere more private.
Well, I'm pretty busy right now. Either say your piece or make an appointment.
The balding man rolled his eyes and said something under his breath to the others. The merc on the right reached into a large pouch hanging off their hip and pulled out something wrapped in a white handkerchief and tossed it over to Vinny. Barely catching it with one hand, almost dropping his coffee, Vinny scowled. He was just about to curse them out when he caught a glimpse of what he had been holding.
Bobby, get the fuck out. I'm gonna see these folks in my office.
But, boss!
Get the fuck out, Bobby. I'll call you if I need you.
Bobby nodded and ran off, while Vinny did his best to keep a straight face, balance his coffee in one hand and what he found in his other.
All right. Why don't you fine folks follow me, and then we can talk.
The one in the middle just smirked as they fell into line behind Vinny and walked into his tent. Placing his coffee on the desk while putting the handkerchief beside it, Vinny sat down and waved the others to the empty guest chairs. The 2 mercs just stood, one keeping an eye outside, while the other sat down, crossed his legs, and looked across the desk at Vinny.
You got my attention, but you better not be fucking with me.
Mr. Costa, no, I am not, as you say, fucking with you. And that is exactly what you think it is.
All right, I'm listening.
My name is Blackburn, Dr. Blackburn. I represent an interested party who wishes to engage your services.
What services would those be?
A very important and private contract. My associates are well aware of your other activities outside of your employment with the Blue Ridge Caravan. We would expect that this be handled in a similar manner, and the compensation will be, in a word, lucrative.
Vinny leaned back, but couldn't keep his eyes from straying to the handkerchief again.
My associates require a courier. Something was lost a very long time ago. We need it to be recovered and returned to us.
That's pretty vague. I mean, Appalachia ain't small. That sounds like we'd be looking for a needle in a haystack.
Blackburn nodded and motioned to one of his associates. The mercenary took out a small electronic device, similar to a portable radio.
This will point to the location of the target. However, it has a very short range. The courier will need to be within 2 miles before the signal will even begin to register.
All well and good, but the mire ain't small either. How's one person going to find anything in all that mess? And better yet, why don't you just go yourself?
First, we only know the approximate direction and distance. Your courier will need to be resourceful. Second, my associates wish to remain anonymous. They cannot be involved directly in this affair. It would be unfortunate should their intervention be required.
Vinny looked skeptical.
In terms of payment, what you have in front of you is merely a down payment. When you have selected a courier and they meet our approval, you will receive triple what you see there. Upon the successful retrieval of the target, you will receive 10 times that amount. We believe that is more than fair.
Leaning forward, Vinny put his hand over the handkerchief.
Well, Dr. Blackburn, you have yourself a deal. And come to think of it, I might just have someone in mind for the job. They aren't here quite yet, but I expect them shortly. Only hiccup is going to be motivation. Not that I don't like to share, but...
How to keep this courier from running off with whatever you decide to pay them, or ensure they don't try to keep things for themselves.
Yeah, something like that.
We dealt with these human frailties before and believe we can provide the right kind of inducement to ensure compliance.
Blackburn snapped his fingers, and the other mercenary removed another small device from his pocket.
This should provide all the motivation you might require, Mr. Costa.
Is that what I think it is?
Yes, indeed. Just please be careful. It would be a shame to make a mess of things when we are just getting started.
I think we're gonna get along just fine, Dr. Blackburn. Just fine indeed.
Once upon a time, 27 years after the bombs fell, there were two people, a vault dweller and a California girl. They met, and sparks flew. That's when things got interesting. Once Upon a Wasteland is their story. Follow Elizabeth Kirby and Odessa Valdez as they pursue their happily ever after in the post-apocalyptic Appalachian wasteland of Fallout 76. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many other podcasting platforms. Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout 76 love story. Available now.
The old abandoned bog town on the outskirts of Watoga had once been populated by the blue-collar workers who couldn't afford to live in the city of the future just off on the horizon. After the bots went crazy in Watoga and then the bombs dropped, the rundown town became a haven for refugees turned raiders. Their little operation came to an abrupt end when the scorch boiled up from the south and overran the whole area, then the whole region. After the Battle of the Bog and the reduction in the scorch threat, it was the super mutants who became the old town's new residents. It wasn't long before even the most seasoned wasteland veteran learned to avoid the area like the plague. Unfortunately, not everyone got the notice.
Where'd you go? Huh? Gonna find you? Gonna kill you!
The super mutant stalked through the ruined buildings looking for his prey. He was hungry again, as were his brothers, and he could smell the meat human somewhere in the area.
Fuckity fuck, fuck, fuck.
I smelled your fear, human!
Erin, better known as Red, swore to herself. Playing hide-and-seek with a bunch of big green monsters who wanted to eat her was not really how she wanted to start her first day in Appalachia. She'd been dodging in and out of the abandoned buildings for almost an hour now. Her partner was supposed to be here, but as soon as she got into town, she ran into these... whatever they are. It hadn't helped that she tripped over a bloody pile of bones while trying to back up, unnoticed. Landing on her ass, she found herself elbow-deep in partially consumed flesh, bones, and an assortment of unidentifiable organs. Cursing a lot louder than she meant to, the creatures all turned in her direction and the chase was on. Now here she was, pressed against the back of an old police station, no partner in sight, and running out of options. Red could hear the heavy footfalls of at least one of the things closing in. She needed to move, and fast.
Shit. It's now or never, I guess.
Red sprinted around the building, only to have several loose bricks fall in her wake, making a loud, crashing sound.
Let's play, little human!
The super mutant charged forward, turning the corner and firing his assault rifle at nothing. He looked around and scratched his head. That was a mistake. From just above, Red sighted down her old but reliable service rifle and fired a burst of 5.56 directly into the big creature's head. It took a few seconds for the less than jolly green giant to register that it was dead, and it fell over with a puzzled look on its face. Red jumped down from her perch along the second floor of the crumbling building and landed next to the body.
Ugh. These damn things smell even worse when they're dead.
Red quickly looted the body of some extra ammo and a stim pack, then ran behind the next partially intact building, trying to catch her breath. Her caravan garb was covered in dust, and she took off her dirty black cowboy hat to brush herself off. Her fingers were sore and bleeding from the frantic scramble up the side of the last building. Red's ears perked up when she heard the howl of a mutated hound not far off. It must have gotten her scent.
Fuck me.
Red slapped a fresh magazine into her rifle. Looking at her surroundings, she spied an old flatbed truck with what appeared to be some kind of heavy weapon on board. It was in the open, but dodging these creatures was not her idea of a good time either. Ducking low, she made her way along the side of the building, darting to the next and then over to the next, even as she could hear the big creatures making up the distance behind her. There was another 50 feet or so between her and the truck, but they were in the open. If she screwed this up, she'd end up at the next course on the menu. In her head, she counted to 3, slowly. 1, 2. When she hit 3, she ran full speed in the direction of the truck.
No more games! Time to die!
The bullets chewed up the asphalt around her, and a round even ricocheted off her armor, leaving a web of cracks in its wake. She covered the last 10 feet and leapt into the back of the truck over a row of sandbags. Sure enough, she landed directly behind a tripod-mounted 50 caliber heavy machine gun. Hoping the good Lord was with her, not that she believed in that sort of thing, she used one hand to grab the handle and the other on the cocking mechanism. Less than 100 feet away, the group of 5 creatures broke cover, charging towards her, firing both assault and laser rifles. She swiveled the heavy machine gun in their direction and held down the trigger. The barrel exploded with the sound of heavy rounds, at first chewing up the ground around the creature's feet, before she corrected and steadied her aim. The bullets tore through them, even blowing off limbs, but they just kept coming. Within just a few seconds, the box magazine was empty, but the final creature fell forward on its face, ripped nearly in half. A final hound rounded the corner and continued the charge, but she took out her rifle and put it down with a quick burst. Red was finally able to exhale, and taking deep breaths, she could smell the cordite and blood in the air. Red slumped back in the truck, exhausted, thirsty, and despite the recent violence, incredibly hungry as well. She felt something poking in her back, and when she turned her head around, she found herself face to face with the last person who happened to man this particular weapon. Despite the advanced decomposition, she could tell it was a man, probably a raider by his outfit, with several bullet holes in his torso, with the obvious reasons for his current condition. He had a couple of grenades on him, one of which was now making her back very uncomfortable. She stood up finally, and then took the grenades.
I mean, he's not gonna need them.
Red went back to make sure that her Brahmin was still in one piece, and lucky for her, Maxie, her pet Brahmin, was exactly where she left him earlier that day, still tied to a dead tree and gnawing on some grass. Slipping the grenades into her explosive pouch, she stroked the Brahmin's 2 heads before producing a pair of sugar cubes from her pocket, feeding each head in turn. She pulled out an old map and finally got her bearings. Without her contact, the only place left for her to go was the Big Bend Tunnel, where she could meet up with the Blue Ridge Caravan. If she made it there in one piece, then she'd decide what to do next. Untying the Brahmin, she walked back through the old town. She stopped from time to time to check the blood bags and buildings for useful scrap. She also made sure to loot the bodies of the dead creatures. Red found plenty of ammunition, which she needed to replenish her dwindling stock. Near the end of the town, she found her contact, Jimmy Boy. Well, some of him anyway. Unlike her, he hadn't been so lucky to avoid the resident super mutants, and he was now the primary component of a meat stew, slowly simmering in a large cooking pot.
Well, couldn't have happened to a nicer asshole.
It had been old Jimmy Boy who sold her on coming to Appalachia with stories of gold in the hills and caps to be made. Of course, things hadn't worked out the way she thought down in Tennessee, so taking the chance on Appalachia was better than hanging around waiting to take a bullet. Served him right, though, because now she was up shit creek, without that paddle that people kept talking about. Red walked her Brahmin out of the bog town and down the road towards the Big Bend Tunnel, in a very uncertain future.
Protect and serve.
Good afternoon, members. The Battle of the Bog Memorial Commemoration will be held in the Ash Rose Garden at 1500 hours today. Attendance is highly encouraged. The White Spring Chapel is closed until further notice for cleaning. Team Cryptid is looking for volunteers for an expedition to Monongah. Any interested members should contact Captain Skinner for details. New duty rosters and field assignments are now available in operations. God bless the new Enclave, and God bless America.
Come on, Val. You promised.
Lilith, you can't be serious.
I've done everything you've asked. I stayed away from Morgantown. I killed Beckett and those Blood Eagles. And I haven't even tried to eat the Overseer, even after she tried to have me killed. You owe me, Val.
Valeria rubbed her eyes and sighed.
All right. If it keeps you from destroying anything or eating any of the operatives. What exactly do you want?
I want a lab.
So you said. but details would be helpful?
A lab, you know, for research purposes. I have so many ideas and I still need to track down dear old Dad's research.
You already have free use of the facilities here, Lilith.
I don't want stuffy old Modus always looking over my shoulder. No offense, Modus.
None taken, Major.
Valeria leaned back in her chair and looked up at the ceiling, imagining any number of the myriad ways that Lilith could cause destruction on a massive scale, should she be left to her own devices.
I know what you're thinking, Val. And no, I don't plan on blowing anything up. Well, not intentionally.
Reassuring. What exactly do you intend to do?
FEV, Val. I want to understand it. Figure out exactly what my dad was doing. Can't think of anyone else in all of Appalachia who can figure the ins and outs of it. I mean, it's literally in my blood.
Colonel, our own attempts to analyze the forced evolutionary virus have been less than successful. We agree that Major Lilith may succeed where we have not.
Valeria knew Modus was right. As part of their original agreement to bring Lilith into the new enclave, Valeria had been keeping tabs on her quest for her father's secret lab and providing reports back to Modus on a regular basis. Unfortunately, the potential of FEV still remained a mystery. Perhaps giving Lilith more freedom, within reason of course, would help them achieve the breakthrough that had eluded them. And then there was the unusual situation developing around West Tech to consider.
All right, Lilith. However, there will be some rules.
Oh.
1. No human experimentation without permission. From me. 2. You need to provide regular reports and samples to Modus and our research staff here.
Do I have to?
Yes, Lilith. And 3, take Malgus with you. While I appreciate his combat skills, his beliefs are becoming disruptive.
Oh, but he's nothing but a big softy, Val.
His attempts to redecorate the White Spring Chapel with, and I quote, the blood of the unworthy, did not go over well with the staff. Regardless, you need someone to help secure your lab space, and he should be more than sufficient.
Lilith crossed her arms and pouted.
Fine, fine, fine.
Modus?
Yes, Colonel.
Are there any facilities you are aware of that might fit Lilith's requirements?
We have compiled a short list we believe are still functional. The locations have been downloaded to your terminal, Colonel.
All right, let's take a look. Arctos Pharma? No, too close to Morgantown. Watoga Emergency Services?
Too many bots, Val. Nothing around to eat.
Point. Oh, this looks interesting. I think this would be perfect, if the facilities in the basement are still intact.
Where, Val? Where?
AVR Medical.
Ooh, I like it.
Should be pretty clear. We eliminated the scorch in the area a while back, and so far most of the settlers in the region have steered clear of Charleston, so you should be left alone.
Goody.
We have a team in the area. I'll have them sweep the building and confirm if the lab spaces are operational. Modus?
Yes, Colonel?
Work with Lilith to get a full rundown of everything she needs. She can take anything she wants, and can give you explicit purposes for, as long as it doesn't compromise our work here.
Agreed, Colonel.
Now, Lilith, please, don't get into too much trouble. And if we need you back here, I expect that you'll still follow orders, promptly. Got it?
Yes, Val.
Now that that's settled, please go downstairs and let Malgus know. You're the only person he listens to anyway. And hey, Lil?
Yeah, Val?
Be careful.
Lilith just smiled and gave Val a wink, which didn't do much to put her at ease. Lilith was the closest thing that Val had to family, and she hated the idea of anything happening to her. However, being nearly a force of nature, Valeria also knew that she couldn't control her. Better to set her sights on something productive at least. Lilith skipped out of Valeria's office and down the hall, whistling a happy tune.
Why do I get the feeling I'm still going to regret this?
Protect and serve.
Hi, I'm Fire Writer, and I'm the host of The Pixel People, a podcast dedicated to taking a close look at our favorite characters from our favorite video games. From major characters who define the course of a game's storyline to smaller characters who you might have never noticed. Every week, we go beyond the quest line to examine a particular character's story arc and choices, and discover the real-world parallels and life lessons hidden just below the surface. I hope you'll join us. You can find the Pixel People on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts.
Protect and serve.
The grounds of the White Spring were still well manicured and maintained, as the groundskeeper Mr. Handybots continued their decades-long job of keeping the resort in top shape, regardless of the conditions of the outside world. Unlike the former guests of the hotel, who represented the cream of Appalachian society, the grounds were now home to a very different kind of clientele. Refugee Row, the name granted to the line of cottages which extended across the resort, and now occupied by former residents of Vault 76, was bustling as students headed off to class in the schoolhouse, which was once the old White Spring Golf Club. Major Stein was escorting his guest, Sophia DeGuerre, around the grounds after her first meeting with the Colonel.
I made a fool of myself.
No, you didn't.
Of course I did. And you did jinx me. All I could do was stare at her eye.
Well, I mean... Okay, maybe you did. But just a little bit.
A little? I was so embarrassed.
Trust me, Sophia. Before the Colonel got the replacement eye, Lilith used to tell pirate jokes every single time she saw her.
You're kidding, right?
Nope. And I might have said aye aye, Colonel, a few times myself.
You didn't.
Trust me, under that very hard exterior that the Colonel puts up, she does have a sense of humor.
Yes, but how can you tell?
I've seen her smile.
I'll believe that when I see it.
Major Stein!
Oh, hello, Jennifer. I'd like you to meet my guest, Sophia DeGuerre.
Oh, pleased to meet you, Miss DeGuerre.
Sophia's just fine. Nice to meet you, too.
Jennifer Martin is our very own school teacher and community representative. She helps look after things up here, and I make sure she gets what she needs to help the folks who've settled here.
Thank you for those kind words, Major.
I may not know the time, but aren't you supposed to be in class, Jennifer?
Martha is filling in for me. Actually, I did need to talk to you about something urgent.
Well, that's fine. Go ahead.
Are you sure? I mean, we could go somewhere private.
Not at all.
Are you sure, Andrew? I mean, I don't want to pry.
No. It's all right. So, Jennifer, what exactly is wrong?
Jeremiah Brooks and Stanley Kaplan are missing.
I'm sorry, Jennifer. I may be hard of hearing. Did you say that they're missing?
To be honest, we didn't notice for a couple of days. Jim thought they were working on the new water purification system by the 17th hole, and Gary thought they were assigned to the foundry behind the old presidential cottage.
And they weren't in either location?
No. We double-checked the assignments. You know, the ones your friend Mr. Otis sends up every week. And sure enough, Jeremiah and Stanley were assigned to both jobs.
That's definitely strange. Those two are not the kind of people to just up and disappear. Did you happen to speak to the security detail about this?
We did. They don't have any records of either man leaving the resort. I mean, it's possible they snuck out, but it isn't like either of them. I'm worried.
All right, Jennifer. Let me check a few things, and I can ask for a sweep of the grounds. I don't think we've had any reports of ghouls on the premises, have we?
No, thank goodness. It's been more than a year since we've seen any of them. Well, the feral kind, anyway.
All right. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I promise we'll find them.
Thank you, Major. I'll also get that list of supplies we need for the holiday pageant. The kids are so excited to put on another show, given how successful it was last year.
Jennifer, before you ask, we don't need any more violas, do we?
Jennifer laughed, and Sophia gave Major Stein a very quizzical look.
No, not at all. However, I think Henry might want to talk to you about something else he has in mind.
Oh, really? Well, tell him to come find him. As long as it doesn't involve another musical instrument and another Goose chase across Appalachia, that is.
I will do that. And thank you again.
Jennifer passed along a list of pageant supplies and turned to walk back to the golf club.
Mr. Otis. So, wait. Does she mean Modus?
It's part of the Colonel's orders. We don't talk about what goes on downstairs to the folks up here. The less they know, the better.
But they are from Vault 76 too, correct?
They are. A big group of them showed up a few months after Reclamation Day. Colonel wasn't too keen on letting a bunch of civilians in. As she put it, too many mouths to feed. But between Modus and I, we convinced her it would be a good idea. And it's worked out pretty well. Now, to be fair, they are mostly self-sufficient, and really help salvaging vital scrap from the grounds.
And they live in the hotel?
The hotel is still mostly ours. Civilians have some access to the facilities, but they live and work in the cottages. We weren't doing anything with them, rather than let them go to waste. They've been turned into quite the bustling settlement.
Have you let anyone else in?
No, not really. The Colonel doesn't want us to get overrun with more mouths to feed and less people that are willing to help. She'd rather folks do their rebuilding out there so we can focus on the mission here. And I kind of agree with her on that.
Andrew, what is the mission?
Rebuilding. Well, to the short and sweet of it, there wasn't much left here after the Scorch came through. No government, no trade, no people, no nothing, really. So the Colonel is helping put things in order.
That's a pretty big job.
Well, it's been rough, but no one said it was going to be easy. You saw the cemetery when you were coming here, right?
I did.
We lost a lot of good people in the bog. Well, that was the worst of it. Every day, folks put their lives on the line to try and make Appalachia a better place. It's hard, but Colonel has done a great job in keeping us focused.
She does have a commanding presence, but she's what, 24, 25 years old? That's young for someone to be in charge like she is.
I thought the same thing myself when I first met her. Let me tell you, it was a real eye-opener when I first saw her. She's made out of some really strong stuff. Those scars of hers, she earned them. And the rank, twice so. She doesn't sit behind a desk. Not often, anyway. She does whatever it takes, and won't make anyone do what they won't do herself.
I guess I should stop staring at her eye every time I talk to her. So, those missing men?
I'm gonna be real honest with you, Sophia. This is strange, even for this place. We pride ourselves on keeping the resort safe, and folks don't just end up disappearing. I mean, could they have gone somewhere out of a bender and sleeping it off? Maybe, but this doesn't seem right.
Well, if there is anything I can do to help, I'd gladly volunteer. It's not like I have much else to do right now.
Well, I could definitely use some help. Say, you're a pilot, right?
Pilot, engineer, astronaut. Jack of all trades, really. Why do you ask?
Well, about a year and a half ago, we found an old Vertibird on the edge of the grounds. It had been covered by the brush. It turns out it wasn't a total wreck. No one really knows much about them from any practical experience. You mind taking a look?
I'd love to. Been, well, a long while since I sat in the cockpit of one. But I remember the system, like it was yesterday.
Excellent. So between that and seeing about these men, looks like we'll be keeping you quite busy.
Thanks, Andrew. I do appreciate it. Oh.
Sophia, are you okay?
Just these headaches. Maybe I need to go see Dr. Harefield again.
Getting worse?
They come and go, but maybe. Has Modus said anything to you about them?
Come to think of it, he hasn't. Could be he's stumped or maybe got distracted. I could ask.
Thank you. Can we go back? I think I need to lie down.
Of course, Sophia. Anything for you.
Major Stein put his arm around Sophia and led her back towards the White Springs service entrance. Behind them, the sounds of Refugee Row slowly receded as the wind picked up, and storm clouds slowly gathered on the horizon. The early morning mist rising out of the deep ravines and washouts of the cranberry bog were starting to dissipate as the morning sun rose over the hills. The ranch hands of the Blue Ridge caravan were busy getting the Brahmin up, fed, and loaded for the day's travel through the tunnel. Normally, this time of day was filled with quiet conversation while work progressed. Under normal circumstances.
What the fuck are you talking about, Vinny?
The morning's work was interrupted by a much more than spirited discussion in the manager's tent. All eyes, including those of the Brahmin, were fixated on the closed tent.
Please, keep your voice down, Red. I don't make the rules.
Inside the tent, Vinny was sitting in his favorite chair, drinking his usual morning cup of spiked coffee.
Why don't you explain it to me again? Because I'm pretty sure I didn't hear you correct the first time.
Vinny took another sip of coffee and set the cup down on his desk.
It's really not that complicated. Your business partner...
Jimmy Boy is dead.
That may be, but your business partner signed a contract with us, and he accepted a very large upfront payment. Of course, you should know all of this, because your signature is on the contract as well. See for yourself.
Vinny produced a piece of paper from his jacket and slid it across the desk to Red. Spitting angry, Red reached down and tore the paper off the desktop. As she read through it, the angrier she got, until she exploded when she got to the bottom to see that Jimmy Boy had, in fact, put her name on the contract. And hell if it wasn't her signature, too. She thought back. Well, there was that one night when she and JB got completely blitzed down outside of Knoxville. Didn't he say something about business? She couldn't remember, but then something jogged her memory.
Fuck.
It had been after that night that JB wouldn't stop talking about hitting the road and seeking their fortunes elsewhere. He started telling the stories about treasure and trading, and it was all starting to make sense. He set her up. If he hadn't already been super meat and stew, she'd kill him herself.
I already talked to Joanna, Red. We're owed either the advance or the contract work. So, you either pay, caps a fine, or we'll confiscate everything you got, starting with that Brahmin of yours.
You touch one hair on that Brahmin's head.
Or you fulfill the terms of the contract. Either way, the contract gets executed. And if you even think about bailing, you also know the BRCC has quite a long reach. If you think Tennessee was bad, you have no idea.
Y'all are well aware I ain't got 1,000 caps, not even close. Came to Appalachia with the clothes on my back and that Brahmin outside.
Again, that's not my problem, Red. A deal is a deal. Look, you're the only reason Joanne accepted JB's proposal in the first place. From what we've heard, you're reliable, tough, and it just so happens I have an assignment that needs someone just like you.
Red finally unclenched her fist and flopped down in the chair behind her, sighing in disgust.
Y'all really know how to put a squeeze on, don't ya?
It's just business, Red. You hold up your end of the deal, the contract is cleared, and you'll even get paid. Double what JB received as an advance. It shouldn't be a hard call.
Red pinched the bridge of her nose, willing away the built-up anger and frustration. No one ever said she knew when to quit, because she didn't. But in this case, she did know when to stop digging a deeper hole.
Fine. What do I need to do?
Pick up and delivery.
Sounds easy.
Vinny chuckled and pulled out a map of Appalachia from his desk, unfolding it in front of Red.
If it was easy, we wouldn't be sending you. I know you're not familiar with this region, but way up here, north of this place called Berkeley Springs, is called the Maya. It's dark, dangerous, and just about anyone with half a brain avoids it like the plague. And that's exactly where you are going.
You got to be joking.
I don't. Joke, that is. See, we don't know exactly where this package is. Only the general area. We've got a transponder, but it needs an update, which will give a signal when you're within a mile or two of where you need to be. You find it, and bring it back.
Red muttered under her breath, which may have been a little prayer or a very long string of expletives. Vinny couldn't tell which.
So, until we have the update, you're welcome to stay here. We got a few extra cots, food, and I'll even throw in the Brahmin feed for free.
So very kind of you.
Vinny shrugged. He wasn't getting paid for his shiny hospitality.
Either way, you'll be heading out tomorrow, or the day after at the latest. I'd recommend you get some rest. You're gonna need it.
Nearly ripping the tent flap as she stormed out of Vinny's office, Red ran headlong into Ares, one of the caravan guards.
Whoa, whoa there, partner. You're gonna get yourself or someone else hurt if you run around here without looking.
Ugh. Red just pushed him aside and went to sit down next to an unused power armor station. Just when she thought things couldn't get any worse, old Jimmy Boy found yet another way to screw her. She'd been sitting there for a while as the sun continued to trek across the sky. Several caravans had both arrived and departed by the time she even bothered to look up. A group of Brahmin had just exited the tunnel and were being led off to the pens for a rest. Alongside them were a group of what looked like soldiers, dressed in sleek camo armor and heavily armed. They formed up and started walking east down the tracks towards Watoga. Then she felt a presence next to her, and when she looked up, there was Ares, standing over her with a plate of food and a Nuka-Cola.
You look like you could use some food. And maybe a friendly face, too.
Fred laughed a little, since he was wearing a mask, but that didn't stop her from taking the plate and the bottle. She put the plate in her lap and looked back up at her benefactor, holding out her hand.
Red.
Ares here. Heard about you. Though, with your performance this morning, I think they heard you in Pennsylvania, too.
Ugh.
Didn't mean to offend. Let me apologize. Word is, you got screwed on a contract, and I'm sorry to hear that. Vinny ain't that bad a guy, but as he keeps saying, the deal is a deal.
I know it ain't your fault, and I don't mean to take it out on y'all. This just ain't what I'd planned or how I thought things would turn out.
It's a hell of a world. You never end up where you want. Most of the time, you just seem to end up where you're needed. Mind if I sit a spell? I got an hour or so before I gotta hit the tunnel again.
How long have you been here?
About a year now. Was doing some work up north that didn't really pan out. So I followed the caravan and ended up here. Funny story, but I used to live in these parts before the war.
So, what happened?
That, Red, is another really long story. Let's just say that Appalachia and I didn't part on the best of terms.
Sounds like me in good old Tennessee.
Oh? A real country girl?
Born and raised.
What are you doing so far from home, Red?
Guess you could say me and some raiders had a difference of opinion.
How so?
Well, they thought I should be dead. I happen to disagree with them.
Hell, Red, I think you and I are gonna get along just fine.
Oh, hey, darling. Were those soldiers passing through here not long ago? Like government or something?
Hard to tell. Come from a place over the hills there. A big damn resort, if you can believe it. Used to be called the White Springs. Don't rightly know what they call it now. What I do know is they don't talk much, can handle themselves in a fight, and saved my very own personal bacon not long after I arrived. Their boss lady, this colonel, got a silver eye. Real mysterious-like. She pops in from time to talk to Vinny. And one of our other traders here, too, Eugenie. Got some good contracts hauling medical supplies on the other side of the tunnel. Every few weeks, they send a team through the tunnel and down to Watoga.
Huh. We got nothing like that down in Tennessee. No one's seen Johnny Law for years. Mostly just hill folks, raiders, and worse. Like I said, managed to get myself on the wrong side of things. Pissed off the wrong kind of people.
Been there, done that. I'm still paying for the sins of the past.
Red felt a welling of frustration from deep inside and pounded her fist into the dirt.
God damn it, this was supposed to be a new start. Get something for myself. Now I'm back in the hole again.
See here? You gotta ditch that attitude. This ain't Tennessee, just like it ain't Pennsylvania either. Appalachia plays by its own set of rules and has its fair share of dangers. But it's also a land of opportunity. You got moxie, kid. Use it. Don't lose it.
Red considered his words, and just like her old pappy used to say, if life gave you corn, you go make moonshine. No one ever claimed her pa was a poet, but she got what he meant.
Well, I have to get back to work. May not look like much around here, but I got a shower in the back. 3 squares a day, and Vinny might be an ass, but he runs a tight ship. Why don't you relax a little? You might not get the chance for a while.
Red stood up and shook his hand, thanking him for the food and the bit of wisdom, too. She even walked back over to Vinny and apologized for her behavior. Spending the rest of the day getting to know everyone, she met the other caravan guards, Libby and Kieran, plus the ranch hands, and even a few of the other traders who came and went on their runs. In the late afternoon, as the sun had already set over the hills, and the shadows seemed to travel all the way to Watoga, the skyline to the east exploded in a bright flash. This was followed by several more, resulting in small mushroom clouds which dotted the horizon. Shielding her eyes, she grabbed Libby, who just happened to be walking by.
What the hell was that?
Just more cleanup work. Those folks who came through our lair have been hunting down the remaining scorched beasts and closing up old fissure sites. They aren't subtle about it either. They've been throwing around mini-nukes like they were candy.
Scorch beasts?
Oh yeah, sorry. I forgot that you haven't been around. Think dragons, but radioactive, and they look like bats.
Excuse me, darling. What again?
Giant, radioactive bats that carry a deadly plague.
Are you serious?
Really not that bad. At least, not anymore. Most of them got wiped out in some big battle east of Watoga just before we arrived. You see them every now and again, but from what I've been told, there used to be hundreds of them around.
So what happened?
Quick history lesson. These scorch beasts wiped out everyone in Appalachia sometime after the end of the war, infected anything they didn't kill, and turned them into these things we call scorched. Lucky for all of us, Vault 76 opened a few years ago, and they developed a vaccine for the plague. Then a bunch of them took on the scorched head-on in that battle I told you about. There was this queen thing and thousands of infected creatures, and after she was killed, we don't see them around very much.
Christ on a cracker. Just what the heck have I got myself into?
Guess you don't see things like this back where you're from.
Got the standard mutations, ghouls, and such, but flying bat monsters? No way.
Well, to hear those 76ers talk about it, seems like the cleanup is almost done. They still keep an eye on things, and I'll tell ya, I sleep a lot easier with what they've done.
The pillars of smoke continued to rise above the horizon, the patter of automatic weapons fire still audible above the general din of the bog. Over the next hour, the sounds receded into the background, replaced with the chirping of insects and the squawking of birds. As the sun finally set, the whole area got quiet again, and the caravanners closed down operations for the evening. Aries and Libby were kind enough to find Red a fresh bedroll and a decent place to sleep. As she lay down, Red tried to release a bit of the built-up tension by counting the stars above. It was something her mom used to do years before, well, before the raiders came. It took a while, but she finally drifted off to sleep, with the sound of the bog in her ears.
Hi, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Ariel.
And we're the hosts of the Legend of Zelda Lorecast, a podcast about all things Legend of Zelda, from Errol to Zora,
and all the fun things in between.
If you're ready to dive deep and learn more about the Legend of Zelda lore and everything surrounding it, come join us on the Legend of Zelda Lorecast. You can find us on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
We hope to see you soon.
The braying of the Brahmin and the work of the ranch hands woke Red up early that morning. Stretching, she rolled out of her cot and yawned. Aries patted her on the shoulder as he walked by.
Up and at 'em, Red. Chow should be ready soon. And Vinny's been looking for you, too.
It must be just about time for her to find out what kind of new nightmare of an assignment old Jimmy Boy had gotten her into. Red grabbed her pack and headed back out to where some makeshift showers had been set up. One never got much privacy in the wasteland, and Red was far past the point of modesty. She didn't even care that the showers consisted of buckets of lukewarm water poured over one's head. It was just nice to feel somewhat clean after weeks of travel. Aries had gotten her some clean clothes, having suggested that she burn the old ones, which she was grateful for. The new duds had plenty of pockets and actually felt comfortable for once. Her old clothes had been the worse for wear after a long trek up the Appalachian Trail from Tennessee. However, she kept her cowboy hat. It was old, dusty, and smelled not the best, but it was one of the last items she had from her family, and she'd be damned if she would give it up for anything, or anyone.
Hey, Red. Vinny's looking for you.
Yeah. I'll be right there.
Red wasn't looking forward to the conversation this morning. She silently cursed Jimmy Boy for getting her into this mess in the first place. Red walked up towards Vinny's tent, There were already several caravans lined up for their turn through the tunnel, and she had to weave her way in and out through the Brahmin and be careful not to step in the poop along the way. Opening the tent flap, the Blue Ridge Caravan manager was sitting in his favorite chair, drinking his 4th cup of morning coffee. In between sips, he waved her into the waiting chair.
Well, I hope you had a restful evening, because your assignment officially starts now.
Vinny reached under his desk and produced a small electronic device, which looked like a small radio.
This is your tracker. Once you get within a couple of miles of the target, it'll start beeping. The closer you get, the more beeps you get. Pretty simple, right?
Vinny put the tracker on the desk and slid it over to Red. She picked it up and looked it over. To be honest, it sounded way too simple.
So, what's the catch, Vinny?
The mire ain't small, Red. The client doesn't know exactly where the package is. They got some ideas, and we've marked them on these maps for you. But they might be a little out of date.
Vinny slid a set of folded maps across the desk.
And?
Kid, just giving you the skinny here. Straight is all. Either way you play it, best bet is to head north. Follow the mountains until you get to the mire. There are a few landmarks on that map which you should be able to spot. Even a couple of bot traders up that way too, which are also marked on our maps.
Red took the pile of folded maps and put them into one of her many pouches.
Oh, there is one last little detail I forgot to mention. Bit of an insurance policy.
Huh?
Vinny snapped his fingers and Red felt 2 pairs of hands on her arms, holding her down in the chair as she felt something cold and metallic snapped around her neck.
What are you doing? Get your hands off me. No one said you could touch me. I will bite your ears off, you son of a bitch.
Later, both Libby and Ares swore you could hear Red's cursing all the way down in Watoga. The bunker commissary was nearly empty. Protectrons moved from table to table, collecting the remains of various dinners, plates, and silverware, while members filtered out to their duty assignments or back to their quarters for the evening. In one of the back corners, Captain Reynolds, head of the New Enclave Logistics, sat by himself. He barely touched his food and tried to steady his trembling hands. He'd been addicted to Daddy-O for years now, and his supply was beginning to run low.
God damn it.
For 2.5 years now, Reynolds had been waiting for the Colonel to make good her threat to punish him for what happened in Flatwoods. He had tried his best, worked as hard as he could in an attempt to make himself indispensable, but time after time he could see the look in the Colonel's eyes when she spoke to him.
It wasn't my fault. Things just got out of hand. Damn Jenkins.
Of his original crew that made that supply run from Morgantown to Flatwoods was Sally. He was the only one that was left. Jenkins and Thomas died in the bog. Leroy disappeared a week ago, supposedly on a supply run to Charleston, but he never came back.
All Sally's fault. Should never have come with us.
Reynolds didn't know how much longer he could last, always looking over his shoulder, fearing one day the Colonel, or worse, Lilith, would show up at his door. He was a wreck, and it was only the drugs that kept him going, but even now they were running out.
Captain, great to see you, mate.
The captain had been so distracted that he hadn't even noticed the big man who now stood in front of him, holding a large plate of food. Reynolds nearly jumped out of his chair.
Oh, Lieutenant Shadow, I didn't...
Funny how someone like me manages to sneak up on so many people.
Lieutenant Shadow was an enigma to most of the other members of the new Enclave. Standing nearly 6 feet 10 inches tall, he was as large as a suit of power armor. Born to Australian parents who emigrated to the United States before the Great War, he had developed a reputation for rebelliousness in Vault 76, including punching out the Overseer, and finally sequestering himself away from the other residents for their remaining time in the vault, though not by choice. Shadow had disappeared after Reclamation Day, only to reappear in the White Springs bunker about the same time the Colonel arrived. Shadow, his real name was spoken only rarely and never in the big man's presence, soon developed a reputation for being able to get into places that no one else could. That was why he had been chosen to lead the team who infiltrated Site Old Charlie and launched the nuke which kicked off the Battle of the Bog. Unfortunately, Shadow had been the only survivor. The relief team had followed a homing beacon to a point south of the silo, which turned out to be an emergency exit, and there they found the lieutenant, badly wounded, but alive. Afterwards, during the debrief, the lieutenant stated that after launching the missile, a wave of robots attacked the command center, killing the others and wounding him before they could reach the escape hatch. It had taken 3 months for Shadow to fully recover from his injuries, and when the colonel attempted to assign him to a new team, he refused. Shadow said he preferred to work alone, and given his record, who was she to deny his request? The other members tended to avoid him, and Shadow didn't seem to care. As far as the colonel was concerned, he got the job done, which was enough for her.
Mind if I sit?
Of course not.
Shadow put his plate on the table and took a seat, and was soon shoveling food into his mouth.
Roasted red stag is the best. Beats Brahmin if you ask me.
Yeah, I agree.
Course you do. It's bloody obvious, isn't it?
Reynolds gave a bit of a nervous laugh. What the hell did Shadow want? Outside of requisitioning this or that, he'd never actually spoken to the man before in any meaningful way.
Are you doing okay, Captain? You look a bit nervous.
Fine, I'm fine. Just busy, you know?
Shadow just smiled and ate another heaping portion of radstag.
I guess I'd better get back.
I think you'll stay a while. I'm not done eating.
Shadow never looked up from his plate, but the tone in his voice made it clear that Reynolds wasn't going anywhere. The big man finally finished eating and opened his Nuka-Cola, raising the bottle to his lips and chugging the entire beverage before wiping his mouth, and putting the bottle back on the table.
That's good. Still better than anything we had back in the vault. Funny story, after my little incident with the Overseer, did you know she locked me up and threw away the key?
I didn't know that.
Of course you didn't. No one did. Well, except for a few of the security folks. Managed to slip out of that last night, though, while the rest of you had that big Reclamation Day party. I slept in my bed for one last time. Oh, the memories. Course, I also remembered exactly who kept me locked up, too. They aren't around anymore. Above ground, that is.
That's horrible.
You have no idea, mate. But that's the past. Still a few loose ends to tie up, but I have plenty of time. Got something real special planned, but first things first.
Shadow leaned back and stretched before reaching into his front pocket, pulling out a small package and placing it in front of Reynolds.
Got a few things to talk about, but first, I think you need to take the edge off.
Reynolds tentatively took the package from the table and tore open the top. Inside were several doses of Daddy-O. He looked up at Shadow nervously.
This is against regulations.
Mate, don't disappoint me by playing dumb. If you haven't figured it out by now, I know everything there is to know about Guy Reynolds. Then we might as well just end this conversation now, and we can just wait around to see what the Colonel has planned for you.
Shadow reached across the table for the package.
No. That won't be necessary.
Thought as much. Perhaps you are ready for a conversation. First, feel free to partake.
Here?
Good a place as any.
But, Modus, the cameras, someone will see.
Don't worry about that. You and I have as much privacy as we need. You see anyone else around but bots?
Reynolds looked around. The commissary was empty except for a few Protectrons performing cleanup. The captain couldn't hold off any longer and took one of the Daddy-O syringes and rolled up his sleeve. The prick of the needle didn't bother him in the least as the drug flowed into his bloodstream. He felt a sense of calm return that he hadn't felt in days.
Looks like that hit the spot, mate. Now, see, I have a bit of a proposition for you.
All right. What do you want from me?
Well, see, we've been putting together a little operation on the side.
Who's we?
Shadow ignored the question and continued.
A bit of an insurance policy, if you will. Not that the Colonel is doing a bad job or anything, but she's only human, right? Always pays not to put all our eggs in one basket.
And what does this have to do with me?
You're the head of logistics. Our project requires certain diversions of material and technology. Sooner or later, you or someone else would notice. With you on the team, we can keep things under wraps until we're done.
But what if the Colonel finds out?
She won't. Again, not if we bring in the right people. And she's got enough on her plate right now to notice.
And what's in it for me?
Mate, you get to keep breathing for a start. Beyond that, as much daddy-o as you need. Just so long as you understand your place and what we'll be asking you to do. So don't screw up. Down the road, the more useful you are, Captain, the brighter the future will look.
Reynolds carefully considered Shadow's words. If he said no, Lieutenant would probably kill him just as dead as if the Colonel or Lilith did it. So he really didn't have anything to lose.
Okay, Lieutenant. I'm in.
Shadow smiled and stood up, towering above the captain.
Good choice, mate. And back to the we of this little operation. Meet me at Maintenance Hatch D45 in 2 hours.
With that, Shadow turned and left, grabbing 3 more Nuka-Colas on his way out, leaving Reynolds alone again. Two hours later, Reynolds found himself navigating through the bowels of the bunker. The old maintenance tunnels were rarely used by anyone except the bunker bots, and it took the captain more time than he expected to finally find the right hatch using the flashlight on his Pip-Boy. As he approached the hatch, it slid open upon his arrival. On the other side was a short corridor leading to another large door.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
The captain walked down the hall and found a hand scanner on the side of the wall. When Reynolds placed his hand on it, the panel turned green and the door opened.
Right on time, Captain.
Reynolds saw Shadow standing next to a terminal holding a clipboard. The rest of the room was filled with all manner of scientific equipment and connected to several other hallways, each with doors running their length. Stepping into the room, the captain didn't recognize much of what he was seeing, but it all looked very important.
Now that you're here, we can give you the rest of the story.
Shadow took a step back and the terminal lit up with the very familiar face of Modus.
Good evening, Captain Reynolds. Welcome to Project Somnus.
Thank you again, members, for joining us here on the Modus Files. If you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe. Better yet, please leave a review to help others find our little enclave. You can also follow us on Twitter, @Modus Files, for more information about our podcast, Fallout 76 content, and random musings on the Enclave. I'd also like to thank our cast: Pandora Beatrix as Colonel Valeria Faustina, Lucy Middleton as Major Lilith Alistair, Exo-1 King as Major Stein, Jessica Starr as Sophia Daguerre, Austin Rogers as Captain Pendergast, Teresa Rule as Lieutenant Tolliver, Chris Smith from One Wall Comedy as Agent Number 1, Vinny Costas, Mercenary Number 1, and Ares, Rob Cunningham as West Tech Scientist, Mark Hosworth as Dr. Blackburn, Josh Smith as the Ranch Hand, Casual in a Corset as Libby, Mandy Marie B. as Jennifer, Daniel Hawthorne as Lieutenant Shadow, and introducing Chrissy Williams as Trader Red, and of course Brad Williams as Captain Reynolds and the voice of Modus. And a shout out to the Apocalyptic Aristocracy Discord, home to a great group of fellow creators, the Robots Radio podcast community and the rest of the Robots Radio Rocket Club, the Fallout for Hope charity drive for St. Jude's Children's Hospital, and Jeremiah Johnson, our favorite character artist who provided the wonderful character artwork you can find on our website. Finally, a very special thank you to the entire Fallout 76 community. We are so happy to be a part of it. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode, Vault Town. Lastly, thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters. God bless the Enclave, and God bless America.
Members, we look forward to your next visit to our little enclave.